The United States of America will not remain in its present form, and will disintegrate. But the detailed question now is, when? And I think I have the answer to that question. Among the factors that help in the collapse of the United States: 1. Demographic and ethnic transition. 2. Economic collapse. 3. Geopolitical changes, the United States of America, China, and the fate of the dollar. 4. The inability of the elite and the American system to adapt to change. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham recently stated that if the Republicans lose now, there will be no Republican presidents in the United States of America in the future, as this will inevitably lead to the transmission of the conflict to the level of states and their blocs, in which the Republicans still maintain their control of power. The state of Texas, along with 17 other states that joined it, has demanded the annulment of the election results in the disputed states, and in response to this a counter-coalition is formed. Indeed, I did not anticipate this gigantic step in transitioning from the Cold Civil War to the Civil War so quickly. The Supreme Court's refusal to hear appeals will not close these cases. Rather, it will lead some states to challenge the legitimacy of the federal center itself, refusing to comply with the ruling. The division is no longer limited to parties and citizens only, but has also become a division at the regional level between administrative entities that include their elites, their powers, and their own borders. And when there is desire, for example, and in the event of loss in political conflict, these states could transform in a jiffy into sovereign states. We remember how the vote of parliaments in the Soviet republics, which represented the Soviet Union, was sufficient to declare the independence of these republics, in light of the weakness of the center. And while we were seeing, until recently, just indications and directions for that, we now actually see the mechanisms by which everything is developing. But the question is, when will the tipping point be crossed in each of these directions? 1. Over the next 20 years, whites will stop being the majority in the United States of America, and over the next 10 years, they will not be able to maintain their being the majority in the entire region bordering Mexico and a number of other states. The informal division has become after the move by the state of Texas officially, and it can be said that this factor is already ready, and there is no need to wait 10 years. 2. Social catastrophe itself leads to revolutions and the disintegration of multinational states. The collapse of the debt pyramid and the emergence of hyperinflation, caused by the U.S. central bank printing uncovered money, is sufficient factor to cause a collapse in the United States. We cannot be certain that the collapse of the debt pyramid with the subsequent collapse of the U.S. economy will definitely happen before 2030, but the likelihood of that happening is very high. This could actually happen in 2021. but even maintaining the soft economic decline for the time being is sufficient to move the confrontation to a new level of quality in the coming years. 3. The Chinese economy has already become larger than the U.S. economy in terms of purchasing power, and somewhere between 2024 to 2030, or even earlier, it will be larger than the U.S. economy in nominal terms, in U.S. dollars. After that, the UN will inevitably replace the dollar as the global currency, and this will have financial, economic, and standard of living consequences in the United States. If the U.S. economy does not collapse before that because of the collapse of the debt pyramid, it will inevitably collapse when the UN replaces the dollar as the global currency. We believe that the United States of America is definitely losing the economic race, and the only opportunity to prevent this is to use military means, and as soon as possible. Within 10 years it will be too late. Meanwhile, according to the chairman of the U.S. Armed Forces Staff Committee, General Mark Milley, China will soon catch up with Washington in terms of its military capabilities. According to the Wall Street Journal, China expects itself to catch up with U.S. military capabilities by 2035. I think that the American economy will not be able to withstand any war with China now and not tomorrow, as it is indeed very unstable, and is only driven by inertia, and with the world's population's belief in the sanctity of the US dollar. Regardless of whether there is a war or not, in both cases the dollar will lose its position as a global currency before 2030, which will lead to an economic collapse, and then a subsequent collapse of the country. 4. We monitor awareness of all these challenges on the part of the American elite. U.S. President Donald Trump embodies the desire of those who are aware of all these trends and are trying to reverse them. Did he succeed? No. Trump has directed attempts to sabotage over 4 years, and the entire American political system, represented by the deep state and with it a large part of the American people, has shown a lack of understanding of the problem, or an unwillingness to save the United States in its current form. The political system in the United States of America is paralyzed and unable to find a lifeline. The two sides may be aware of the crisis and its magnitude, but both sides offer contradictory and opposite ways to get out of it, and settlement is impossible. The struggle between the two parties is a fateful struggle over annihilation, and neither side has any restrictions in choosing the means. One side will inevitably lose, which means the death of his future. Therefore, the coming year 2021 will not bring any lull to the status quo, rather an escalation of the conflict will be inevitable. Now to the main thing. While the Republicans and old white America have powerful weapons to prevent their enemies, the Democrats, from taking control of the Senate, the struggle continues to control the federal level of power. The Republicans have something to lose if the United States collapses. The Republicans' loss of this last stronghold, the Senate, will lead to the transition of the conflict to the level of the states, and the division of the country between regions controlled by the Republicans and others by the Democrats, each trying to walk their own path. And if Biden takes office, the Democrats will lack 2 seats to control the Senate, which they may get in January during the second round of elections in Georgia, which Biden has just voted for. And in the last elections, 5 states moved from the Republican camp to the Democratic. 2 to 3 Republican senators from these states will be re-elected in 2022, and if they lose, control of the Senate will fall into the hands of the Democratic Party. Demographic changes are also likely to continue to shift more and more states from the Republican Party to the Democratic camp, so Republicans are likely to lose control of the Senate almost 100% forever by 2030, with all the consequences described previously. The United States of America now resembles George Floyd, because of which the Black Lives Matter movement emerged, who was under the influence of drugs, printing uncovered money, and at the same time suffering from COVID-19, political, economic, and demographic crises, an ethnic and political system crisis, while he decided to stand up to the policeman, China. Therefore, it is difficult to determine the actual cause of death, but death in light of this situation with all these crises appears to be expected, and perhaps even inevitable. Thus, the United States of America does not have any opportunity to stand in front of the current historical changes, each of which represents a destructive killer for the country in the long run, but together at the same time.